Board. Perfect. So just to quickly introduce, this is part of our school culture expert series. Today we're chatting with Kari Franchini, who's the principal at Creekside Middle School. Super excited to have her here. Just so you know, I'm Anna. I'm the director of marketing with LiveSchool. I'll be just moderating what's in the chat, helping to answer those questions and making sure we don't run into technical difficulties. And then I also have my wonderful colleague, Hannah, very, very close to Anna, Hannah Kelly on the line. She is one of our partnerships managers at LiveSchool. She will also be helping me with the chat as you all have questions. One of the things I want to note, this is the first time we're doing this as a Zoom meeting. So one of the reasons why I wanted to make that switch is that we really want to encourage this to be interactive. So as you're asking questions, we might actually bring you on to ask those questions too. I just find that, rather than typing it out, when you can give some more of that nuance or context, which just allows us to give you a better answer and Kari to better advise it based off of what her school has achieved and done over the last few years. So please definitely drop those in. And if you want to come on live, let us know too to ask that question as well, or we'll ask if you're interested in that. So anyways, without further ado, let me turn it over to Kari.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here to listen to what we're doing here at Creekside. It's funny, I don't know that I'm an expert of any kind, but we are all definitely learning and on a journey together. So I'm happy to share with what we're doing. And any ideas that we have that can be helpful for anybody, happy to pass along. So just a little bit about me. I'm the principal here at Creekside Middle School in Fairfield, Ohio. I'm headed into year 6 of administration here at the middle school. I actually started teaching in this building. I taught 7th and 8th grade math, graduated with the kids up to 9th grade math, and then did instructional coaching for a year before going into administration with that same group of kids through 10 through 12. So I graduated with them and got to come back to middle school, which is my home. And I just love, quirky, weird middle school kids. And, it takes a special person to, when you say you're a middle school person, like people kind of go, oh gosh, I couldn't deal with that. So, but that's my wheelhouse and I love it. So I had the unique circumstance of coming back into administration in a building where I was a teacher. So I was very familiar with the current process of, we had teams of teachers, so typically 4 on a team. It could be 5 with an intervention specialist. And we were keeping track of discipline across all of those teachers. So we had discipline logs at the time that students, if you had to sign the discipline log, it was a thing, and you went up to the binder and the kids had to sign it. And then every week the teachers would get together, sit down, and, this kid had a signature in my room and in my room, and, and if they had 5, there was a consequence. And so I was very familiar with that process. Was also familiar with the positive side of it, of, handing out the little bucks or the little signature cards in the agenda where the teachers would sign off on those. And then after so many, you could get a prize. So that was kind of a unique thing coming into administration in the building that I had already worked in. If I was not in that situation, I think I would have at least waited a year to make the change to LiveSchool, just because learning like what's good and bad about the current system is really important. But knowing what I did when I came back into the building, our district was redistricting everybody. We had just built some new schools. So we went from a 5-6 building and a 7-8 building. 5th grade went back to elementary, 6 through 8 became 2 middle schools. So I really had the unique opportunity, like new principal, new building, 6th grade's now with us. What do we want this to look like? So we got to do some visioning around that. Just some advice, like we did a committee in the summer, basically like if you're interested in talking about building wide expectations and PBIS and what, this could look like, we're going to have a meeting on such and such day. I was familiar with who I needed to have around the table. It can't be all of your early adopters. You want some people in the room that, are going to be a little harder to persuade, or, those really experienced teachers that have a lot of respect within your staff. If you can get them on board, it will go much, much smoother. And I happen to have a couple of those as part of that group. So that was really, really great. So that group started with creating our building-wide expectations, which haven't changed. So these are what you'll see in the hallway, in the classrooms, in the office area. We just have, ours are be kind, be positive, be responsible. Everybody's are pretty similar within Fairfield. There are ones that say be a problem solver. There might be ones that say be respectful, but they're similar district-wide. You will see that ours are pretty aligned in all of the areas because like be kind covers a lot of things. And that was really intentional with that group to sit down and come up with like, what do we want those areas to look like? So once we had this, I was able to say like, hey, are we still doing that thing on paper and signing discipline logs? And the teacher said, yeah. And I said, well, I just spent a year over at our academy as the director. And actually it came from one of my staff members there. We had done a trial of LiveSchool, and at the time it was free because we only had 4 teachers at our high school academy. But if you can get those kids to buy into something, you are golden. So the idea with them was really on the positive side of points for completing work, of points for being on time. You know, think of a high school alternative setting. You're going to have, you know, that pocket of kids that need daily rewards or even more often than daily. And LiveSchool really gave us the opportunity. So I'd had my toe in it over at the academy and then was able to present it to that group of teachers here in the building. And so kind of, you know, threw it out there and showed them what it looked like, you know, on the academy side. And that group of teachers, I think with everything that was changing at the time within the building, said, sure, let's give it a shot. Again, with all of the changes that were being made at the time, I think it was not the priority at the beginning of the year. We were bringing 6th graders into the building. We were, you know, figuring out different teams and different dynamics, and we have different electives. And so it was not forced there at the beginning. It was very slow rolled out. So our first day of professional development is a half day in November around election day. And so we took some of that time and did choice sessions for our teachers. And one of the choice sessions was LiveSchool. And it was differentiated from everybody that's like your early adopter, your go-getter. They are ready to go full blown into it, to the person that hadn't even logged in and doesn't even know what it looks like. So I actually do have all of that like documentation and everything in a file folder that Anna will share at the end. So all of my stuff is available for you guys to steal. Please do it if that's helpful for you. Again, it's everything from like how to give a kid a demerit to how to set up your rewards to how to, you know, a smart sheet on parents and how to get them logged in. So that definitely took some time. But after that first year, like it is what we do. It's how, like, if we tried to take it away right now, I'm not sure what we would do. Because after that first year, we found that our matrix on LiveSchool needed to change a little bit. It is so easy to go in and add different consequences. Sorry, I want to share my screen again. So here is our screen from LiveSchool. So we, again, go back to our 3 things. You're going to be kind, you're going to be positive. They're in alphabetical order. That's why other is kind of in the middle. And we're going to be responsible. So you can earn a point for being on time or not. And so, you know, on your cell phone, and just the reminder there, be responsible. It's very simple, but it's so easy. When I had a teacher come to me and say, hey, I really want to be able to reward kids for meeting their MAP growth goal. Awesome. How many points do you want it to be worth? And we type it in and we move on. Hey, we've really noticed that gum in the science classrooms is a problem. Cool. What do you want that to be? And we type it in and it's there and it's ready to go. So that's just been really nice. And the program itself is very intuitive. It reminds me a lot of like a Google compared to a Microsoft. Like there are just certain things about Microsoft that are not intuitive and you have to go digging. And so it's really nice that it's super intuitive and very easy to work with. I'm not just going to say this because I'm on here with 2 of their employees. They are very responsive when you have questions or concerns. So that's another thing I really appreciate about them. And then let's see. So we took a year, kind of did that initial, and then we realized like there's definitely a disconnect between what we think is a demerit and what we think is like an office referral or an in-class detention. Like, where are those steps in our escalating consequences? So we worked as a staff and it was actually a building-wide survey that we did. And it basically said, like, could you support issuing this consequence for whatever infraction? This is again shared in that folder that Anna will share. But so these were what our staff agreed to as far as consequences and where we thought things would land. Anna, were you going to talk?
Oh, no, I just wanted to ask too, like, as you were planning out your behavior rubric, as you were planning out your behavior rubric, how did you think about some of those different aspects that you add to roll up to that be kind, be responsible, etc. Matrix that you had created?
Sure. So when I was at the high school, we had 5, and it was kind, positive, responsible, respectful, problem solver, and that felt like a lot. District-wide, we previously had respectful, responsible, problem solver, like those were the 3. With the focus on SEL that had come around, and we have so many more kids that really just need to learn to be kind. And you talk in middle school, you're talking social media, you're talking about just with COVID, especially lack of social interaction with each other, and especially in large groups. And so, talking about being kind and, even to yourself, sometimes I think was where that group landed. Again, that came from our staff. So I think it's really important, again, to get that buy-in from your staff members. So again, it says 2020, it hasn't changed because this is what our staff agreed to at the time. So, what gets sent to us versus, what's handled within the classroom. There are definitely times where a demerit escalates to something else depending on the student response. So again, this is in the folder and is shared with everyone as well. I think that was a really good process for us because it required the teachers to reflect on, like, what do I really care about? Is this worthy of a kid missing class time? Is this worthy of a kid, being suspended or sent out of class? Or do they just need a break? Or do they just, if I give this demerit, that's like their warning. We do one where we get 5 in a week. So you can get to 4 and, you can screw up. That sounds funny, but like you can mess up 4 times, but on the 5th one, you're going to have some type of consequence. So each quarter we reset that. So the first 2 weeks that a student gets 5, our team issues an after school detention. On the 3rd time in a quarter, that does get turned into an office referral, just because we feel like that's becoming more of a chronic issue. And we want to try to have some conversations with the kid and the parent just to say, hey, what's happening here? Is it just that they came unprepared to class 15 times in the last 3 weeks? And what can we put into place to say, do they just need an organization system? Do they need, something in their locker that's as simple as that? The trends there on like which kids get points for different things are really helpful when we're having those conversations with parents. Something else that's really helpful for when we're having conversations with parents is, they would say, Miss Brown is always out to get my kid. And, we can go back in and say like, well, they had points in Miss Brown's class, but they also have these points over here. And they also, in music class have, where we don't really see a whole lot of issues. And so it just gives us some really great data for those tier 2 conversations and also with parents. I feel like I'm talking a lot about the negative, so I'm going to talk more about the positive because that's actually the really fun stuff that we get to do. So we have tried this a couple different ways. We have a LiveSchool store. So we have lots of reward options. Those are all in that same folder that I shared with everybody. But you could have anything from Airheads and Gatorades to school supplies to a Twitter shout out. I always tag LiveSchool in it so they can retweet it. But free ones are also always good. So we have done that a couple different ways. We've done delivery to classrooms where one of our office staff helps to organize, just brown paper bags of everything in those kids' rooms. We've done an actual store during lunch where kids can come in and, buy things. The cool thing about that option, that was pre-COVID, was that it was stocked and taken care of by some of our cognitively delayed students. So that gave them a really cool opportunity to learn kind of the like cash register idea, but also to, social skills and all of that. So that was a great one. Again, kind of a pre-COVID idea. And then I would strongly recommend, again, like smaller prizes all the way up to like, so we do things for like 10 or 25 points for those kids that need that quick automatic reward, all the way up to like 500 points if you want to go on the inflatables, think like an after prom kind of idea. We bring in inflatables at the semester, and then we do actually a food truck rally at the end of the year. So we don't pay for the food at the food truck rally. That's, my caveat on that. But the kids get to walk over and, have their choice of tacos and, mac and cheese, chicken and something, and pizza. And so they just really enjoy that one. So those are the two big ones that we've been able to do. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're thinking about a reward system, is think like a Chuck E. Cheese, like there's your cheap stuff, and then you're like kid that's going to save their points all the way up to something else. A huge benefit, students and parents both can be notified when they get a positive or negative point. Initially, that was a concern for our staff, because I definitely envisioned also, like, we have 1,200 kids here in the building, and if you're handing out positives and negatives and all of a sudden someone gets a negative, and you have that parent that calls you and says like, my kid got a negative in so and so's class, and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't have time. But that really doesn't happen. And so just if that's kind of in anybody's brain, I just want to assure you, like, that isn't really a thing. And if we have a parent that calls about demerits, it's typically one of our higher radar parents anyway. So sorry, I have my list of things that I'm going to talk about. I talked a little bit about data to support the tier 2 decisions. It is so helpful to have, when you take a kid to the expulsion table for chronic misbehavior and you just have a list of, what's going on. We actually have an ED unit here in the building, SBH, depending on where you are in the country, but those kids thrive because they get so many positive points from their kid. Like, they may get a detention every week from their teachers, but they are constantly being reassured and reinforced on the good things that they are doing. So I just want to reinforce that as well. I guess the biggest benefit for this is that it got rid of the paper. The collaboration is automatic. It doesn't have to be, that I gave this, me, teacher A, gave this kid 2 points, and teacher B gave this kid. It's, collaborative. It's a really good picture for that kid throughout their day, throughout their week. And so we use it to identify. We did a turkey bowl where kids could earn, they have to earn points for the bowl. They have to earn points for the ice cream. That was kind of a November thing, points for the toppings, that kind of thing for our tier 2. But you would be shocked what middle schoolers will do for, Cheetos that are jalapeno flavored. So just, it puts on the radar for us in a really natural, really easy way. Here are your high flyers. Here's what they're struggling with. Have a conversation with them. Like, yes, you still have to have a conversation to figure out what's going to motivate that kid, but it's just such a more natural and, really built into our system. So, yeah, that's a lot of it, I think. Anna, was there anything else you wanted me to touch on?
Yeah, well, I wanted to back it to go like a little high level as well, to understand. I mean, you mentioned like at the beginning of the year, you were going through this huge school change, bringing 6th graders into the building, right? It's in that behavior simply wasn't the priority, maybe necessarily, or a behavior tracking system. How did you build buy-in with your teachers beyond a system to facilitate it, but just for a behavior initiative? Like, how did you build buy-in to get them to give their time and effort to a behavior initiative for your school?
Well, I think we're all going to deal with behavior anyway. Like it's going to be there, especially in middle school. Our kids don't always make great decisions. That frontal lobe is not, totally developed. So, we're going to be dealing with it anyway. So I think a proactive approach, kind of, that positive reinforcement right off the bat. Again, they had a system and we thought this could make it better and it could make it easier for them. It's easier for the teachers. It's easier for the parents. And so, like everybody involved had already had some work involved in the process. And so this platform made it easier for everyone involved to know what's going on and to be informed. So I think, the buy-in came from, hey, you're already doing the work. Let's try to make it as easy and as streamlined and efficient as possible. Yeah, I think, it's funny because it came so naturally because, again, I think as middle school teachers, they know that kids are going to make mistakes. We know that you're going to have, these situations and you want to reward your great kids too. Your kids that are doing everything right. At the end of the year, when we ran the report of, hey, 800 kids out of your 1,200 did not have a demerit all year. Like we spent so much time on the other end. And it was amazing when we would run that report and be like, wow, I just rattled off a number that was 75%, but it was really higher. I think it was like 83%. Like 83% of our kids are doing exactly what they're supposed to every single day. And if we went to the ones like that got less than 10 for the year, it was even higher than that. So, it was 95% or something just insane of, these, 5% of our kids can be such a distraction, forgive my phrasing, but like a time suck of like, we spend so much time and effort on them as we should, because we need to, but also this 95%, like, let's be proud of that. And let's talk about that. And let's, reward those kids. So this year was actually the first year we kind of created an end of year award that had to do with, we called it the Integrity Award, and it had to do with how many demerits they had all year. And actually it was so many more kids at our award ceremony because that was something that we chose to acknowledge. So again, just the kids that are doing everything right all the time and finding a way to acknowledge them, I think, was definitely an area that we needed to do work on. And this system made it easier for us.
Great. And I have a follow-up question for you, but before I get to that, I just want to, anyone who's participating in the chat, I would love to hear from you. Like, if you're prioritizing behavior, what that looks like at your school this year. Are you doing PBIS, for example? I'd love to maybe exchange some ideas in there and have some conversations. I think this is just such a powerful networking opportunity. So please drop that in the chat, like what behavior looks like at behavior management initiative might look like at your school. But my follow-up question to you is that, talking about those like really cool wins you were able to see from prioritizing, like tracking behavior, right? It comes down to the culture of the school, right? Having that integrity award that these students can feel really proud of the growth that they've seen, or working really hard and showing up and doing the right thing. Like, how have you seen behavior impact your overall school culture, especially as you're kind of building an entirely new building? You get to set that culture from the beginning. Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, and that's actually an interesting question. So, over the summer you refresh and, come up with big ideas, for the summer. And so one of the things I've really been thinking about is, we had teachers at the meeting, when we established these expectations, and that I really want to try to find a way to bring kids into that. Because we talked about, the chart that has teachers are going to hold each other accountable for giving demerits for these kind of things. And we're going to refer these kind of things, we're not going to allow, again, not a Kari thing, but staff said, like, we're not allowing hats and hoods in the hallways. We're not allowing hat, but the teacher that allows the hat in their classroom, like, again, like the accountability to each other for the staff was really important. And so I've been doing some reflecting over the summer on a process that we can use with 1,200 kids to come up with, what does it look like for you guys to be kind, to be positive, and allow the kids to have some ownership of that and to be, talking about when you have a conversation with a kid, it's not that the teacher wants you to be kind. It's not that the teacher wants you to be respectful. It's, you know, again, building that culture of, it's not the top down, it's all of us together and trying to bring the kids into that. So I'm still kind of processing through what that might look like, again, with 1,200 kids. So there's like a Wordle idea floating around up in the brain of, you know, again, what would it look like? You know, what values are important to you? What would you want to see from the people in your classes? And then how to roll that out with the kids and how to fit it into, you know, our expectations and non-negotiables for our staff. So sorry, I took that question a little bit differently than what you started it with. But, you know, I think we started from the top with, you know, me having an idea and then teachers being involved. And I think, you know, getting the kids there is going to be the next step of taking it even better.
Well, I love that idea of accountability then, that, you know, the staff has accountability to each other, that students can eventually have that. And that's Kimberly actually just put it in the chat, which I love this, is that she says that one change they've made to PBIS is to phrase it, I am kind, I am positive, I am responsible every morning. That I am phrase made it personal and set more of an accountability for behavior. And I think that is just really fantastic.
Yeah, that's funny because on our announcements every morning, we say Creekside students are kind, positive, and responsible. But I love the idea of flipping it and, you know, I am, and that the ownership and accountability there. I love that. So
yeah, like getting to internalize that positivity as a student and saying that out loud, you start to believe it too when you say that. I mean, I always noticed that with my students when I was working with them, when I would try to bring them into a process and have them own it and see themselves in it. I always saw so much more success. So I know that I want to encourage anyone who has any questions to drop those in the chat. I thought it might be helpful, Hannah, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but if you wanted to show some of that data that Kari was talking about, just so I think like a visual of what some of that looks like in terms of like tracking those like positive to negatives and seeing, you know, how many students got, you know, positive points or negative points, all those different things you discuss as well, just to visualize that. Because that managing data, I know for me, like I get very overwhelmed by thinking about taking in a bunch of data and information and processing it. So Hannah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Let me share my screen. So I'm assuming, Kari, that when you guys talked about pulling the list of who hasn't gotten a demerit all year, that would be your student scoreboard.
Yep.
So this is essentially showing all of your students in the school, their positives, negatives, ratio. And then if you choose to run a store, the spent is going to show how many points they've redeemed or used to redeem rewards. So this is super helpful because so I like to equate scoreboards to spreadsheets. You have the ability to kind of sort and filter and like make this your own. And so what you can do is go into the calendar, put in very specific time periods or set it to year to date. You would be able to go in and say, okay, I want to see all those students that didn't earn one demerit all year long. So you could go into add logic and say, show me those students that have 0 demerits. Saving that gives you that whole list of your students. And if you do want to download it to a spreadsheet, you can, so you can like easily see the number. Or Kari, when you mentioned less than 10, we would just go in and change that to, you know, less than 10. And now that's going to show that bigger number. So what I love about this report is nobody's staying after to put it all together or, you know, like count anything up. It's all right at the fingertips and you're just putting in some like filters. Kari, how often do you guys use dashboards?
All the time. I think that's more of a me on the admin level than on the teacher level. I was actually going to ask you to show one of these because if you scroll down, it will show you your top 5 students, positive and negative, and then it also shows you your teachers. So like, yes, if you have a teacher giving a ridiculous amount of negative points, but they're also giving a ridiculous amount of positives, that feels a little more balanced than the teacher that's always giving negative points and never doing anything positive. And that can be a great conversation for you to have with your staff to say, hey, maybe we could try, instead of always just dinging the kids, and we've had this as a building wide thing, like we are going to really reinforce being on time this week. Like that is what we're going to go after. It's our highest thing that kids are getting demerits for. So we are going to reward it on the other side. So like for this sheet, I would say coming prepared. So let's reward the kids that are coming prepared and see if we can kind of flip that number on the other side. So I love this sheet. You can run it for individual kids as well. And it's very, very helpful in a parent conference or in a conversation.
Yeah, if we click on the name of a student, then we are able to see just their behavior data. And if you do have a parent conference coming up, or are needing to identify if a student does need additional supports, this will really help you identify, okay, like what is it that we may be struggling with? Clicking on the number in LiveSchool does show you every time a student received it. So you can identify if it is consistently happening in the lunchroom or in the hallway. That'll be apparent here. So those are kind of the data reports. Any other like specific report, Kari, that you guys use all the time?
Can you go back to the insights, like the front?
Yeah.
Sorry, I would have done that, except my insights are blank right now because I
know, because of the wrong.
My kids aren't synced with Clever right now. The other thing that you can do is have certain behaviors that will trigger an alert to you or to a certain staff member. And so if you want those to be positive things, which is great, like, hey, this kid met their MAP growth goal, and you're going to make that positive phone call home, or, it could be something, bigger than that, if that's what more behaviorally focused, but, or typically we wouldn't do demerits for something like super severe that we would want to be made aware of it that way. But the positive ones, I think, can be really fun to set up certain things that you get alerted to, like, there is great stuff going on in my building. I may not get to spend a whole lot of time on it, but there is really great stuff happening.
So you have those set up as the email alerts?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah. So what Kari is talking about here is within the rubric, you are able to set any one of these buttons to automatically send an email to a teacher or admin of your choosing, letting them know, like, hey, this behavior was just logged for this student by this staff member. I love that you're using it as a positive. So, you can do a shout out to them on the afternoon announcements, or like a little prize for them if you want to, but that's something that you can set up right here in the rubric.
And there's actually a good follow-up question. Wondering, how do you give demerits or points to a kid you don't teach? And what does that look like?
Yeah, so LiveSchool is a school-wide system. So any staff member is going to be able to award a point to any student. One way is by pulling up the grade roster. So I like to give the example that I used to be an 8th grade teacher, but I had morning duty in the cafeteria. So, let's say a student like picked up some trash and it was a 6th grader. I could pull up that roster and find the student's name there, or there is search. So if I know it, I can just type it in real quick and say, like, sweet, let's give Omar some positives for picking up the trash in the cafeteria. So any staff member can find any student, whether or not they teach them.
Thank you. And then someone else too, I just think this is interesting, added that what they're currently doing to track behavior, they're looking to digitize it, but they have their own school, what they call strong cards and bucks, which are their guidelines for success. They're looking a way to digitize that and track overall positives across the school. I know, Hannah, you've done a lot of work with this. Maybe there's advice you have just as people go into that process of trying to digitize a behavior system, because that can obviously be a challenging Kari too. What pieces of advice you might have from following a similar process as well, of going from paper to digital?
Kari, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll speak to ours. I think our staff was ready for something different because again, the paper system just seems like it's great for like what you're getting, but oh my gosh, there has to be a better way. And so just, I think communicating the ways in which the digital system is going to be better for them, for the parents, for the kids, I think would just be a recommendation that I would have.
Yeah, I think I definitely see it easier for schools that come in with a paper system and switching to digital rather than coming in with nothing, like you mentioned, Kari. Like you've kind of done all the work and like maybe drowning in paper as I was. So one thing that I really think like is awesome when digitizing it is when you award points in LiveSchool. You'll put it in, you'll get the ding, but my favorite part is that points follow students. So if I see a class later on in the day and I notice that like a few of my students haven't gotten recognition at all that day, or maybe one of the students has 1 or 2 demerits and it's just like having a rough one in my class, like I'm aware of all that because of this data. I can see that they've gotten positives or negatives right here on the button. And so as a former middle school teacher, like seeing how students' days were would have been great. So I could better support them where they were.
And I think the data that comes from having a digital system, because when you're drowning in the paper and the kids don't even know what they got the points for, or like why they're signing the discipline log, or, and we're like, how do we help you when we don't even know, like one was for unprepared and one was for something. And, you ask them to sign the discipline log and that turns into a thing. And so then they have to sign it twice. Like there's just some elements of, it being digital that can't necessarily be recreated with the paper system. Molly just asked about giving points and demerits from the app on the phone. Yes, absolutely. It's really, really easy, actually. The app is super user-friendly. Most of my teachers, even though, my union would tell me not to tell you this, they use their phone for it. There's also a random student selector, like a stopwatch. There's some other things built in that are really helpful, just to like, again, classroom management, keep kids on their toes. So I know my teachers will use that random student selector sometimes as well.
Yeah, that's especially with the phone. Or it works on an iPad or tablet as well. Makes it a lot easier and a lot of course you can add it after class, but the idea is to give these points in the moment and get that recognition. I had another follow-up question that came in that I wanted to ask. I'm trying to remember it. But yeah, as Kari mentioned, there's things like the randomizer too, where you can randomly select students, they get points, a stopwatch if you're trying to, again, do that activity. I know a few customers I've talked to, they actually have it projected on a smart board so they can see if students are getting points when they're doing like a quiet class activity. So students are getting points for focusing or working well with their, with their group. And that's like almost a reminder then to students to start doing that behavior. So rather than you having to correct them, the students almost self-correct themselves because they're seeing their friends get points and they want points as well. So just speaking to that classroom management and how teachers have really enjoyed it, I think that's another aspect. Let's see.
And the ding is like so satisfying when you walk by, like when you walk down the hallways and you hear like ding, 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 like, kids are getting positive points for doing great things. And the other one is the demerit one is kind of sad. It's like a wah, wah, like, and so, the kids like kind of, either one, they kind of perk up and like, oh, somebody got a demerit. And so, strongly, that like just reminder of, oh yeah, I am supposed to be doing XYZ. So.
Yeah. And then I know someone else in the chat, we were asking like what Kari asked what they're currently using. So someone else is using PBIS rewards, which is something we, a lot of people that come to us have formerly been using. I actually don't have familiarity with it, but maybe Hannah, you wanted to talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's another platform that digitizes PBIS. And from what I've been told from our customers that have experience with PBIS rewards and LiveSchool, kind of the big differences are our data reports, I hear, are very user-friendly. That is our goal. Our goal is, because we're all former teachers on the team, it needs to be as simple as possible for teachers to use, because that's how you're going to get the data. That's how you're going to get the buy-in. That's how you're going to get positive culture. And then we haven't really talked about this. I don't know, Kari, if you guys use it, but house points is a part of LiveSchool, and it's team competition. And so a lot of schools, especially this year, coming back from a tough year last year, are really wanting to build camaraderie and school culture and just like focus on positives. And so they're running a house point system. And so we can do that.
And we haven't gotten there because we have teams already, like, so we have our teams of sixth graders. The idea has always intrigued me to have like a team of sixth graders, a team of seventh graders, and a team of eighth graders. That would be like a house. We haven't quite approached that yet. I love the idea. It's a very Ron Clark-esque when you talk about, you know, Harry Potter and house points. Those are all very similar ideas. So love it. See the benefit for sure.
Awesome. Well, we are just about at time, and I know everyone on this call is extremely busy. This is the planning time of the year. So I will be following up after this, linking to Kari's wonderful resources as well as the recording too. So you'll get that from me in the next couple of hours once the recording finishes processing. But if you have any other questions, do feel free to email us. I'm going to put all of our emails in the chat right now. Let's see. Kari added hers earlier. I'm going to retype it.
Yes. And thank you everybody for jumping on. And if you're watching this recording, like, I know it's summer and everybody's planning and, you know, try to come back and like re-school brain. So just thanks for listening. Like I said, we don't have it all figured out, and happy to share what we're doing and get ideas from you guys. So thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.